So I performed the tests of the 16 kilometer by 16 kilometer mesh terrain system, and the results were quite surprising. What ended up happening with the Nanite terrain system was that I ended up getting the same results as what I did from the Epic Nanite demos on my 4 gigabyte video cards. In other words, they run out of memory and can't render the Nanite scene. I had the same issue with the 16 kilometer by 16 kilometer Nanite terrain, which you can see here. On the cards that have more than 4 gigs of memory, I was able to run the terrain no problem, and I ended up getting frame rates consistent with the smaller terrain. So for example, on my R9 RTX 3080 system, I still got more than 150 frames per second. But the issue is that the Nanite seems to just eat up tons of memory when you've got lots of meshes. So for example, if we go into Unreal Editor here and look at the memory size, we can see that the textures are using 46.9 megs worth of memory, which is not too bad of an issue. The textures are actually quite small. But when we look at the meshes, memory size is 109 gigabytes. So the issue there is on the smaller GPUs, I'm running out of GPU memory trying to nanite the 16 kilometer terrain. So what I'm going to have to do is go with a different system to do future tests to see if I can get 16 kilometer terrains to work on a 4 gigabyte card. I will more than likely have to go with TINs, which are triangulated irregular networks. In other words, it is a specific type of mesh optimization that is rendered at typically 10 times to 100 times the performance of what a standard static mesh or grid style terrain would be. So my next goal here is to fire up Autodesk Max and see if its optimizer will let me create tin meshes out of all of my mesh tiles and see how that performs on 4 gig and 6 gig cards, as well as the larger 8 gig, 10 gig, 16 gig cards. So that's where I'm at right now. It actually works fine on systems with 8 gig cards and bigger. Probably similar to the Epic Nanite demos, probably have the same limitations of the hardware that they'll run on. So I'm going to see if I can optimize that by using TINs instead. So here's a screenshot of the performance on the RTX 3080 and a little bit of a walkthrough animation here on the terrain.